Hello, and welcome back to the Evan Here's Culture campaign, the show that takes so long to come out you'd be forgiven for thinking that its host has developed a complete hatred for the unwieldy beast he has created. But that couldn't be farther from the truth. I love doing this show for a plethora of reasons. It gives me a chance to connect with friends and talk about music that they're passionate about. I learn a minuscule amount more about video production with each episode that comes out. And most importantly, I get to discover and fall in love with music that I otherwise might not have heard. Today's album is the perfect example of that phenomenon. Today, I'm talking about 2019's Purple Mountains, the eponymous debut album from Purple Mountains. And I'm not going to bury the lead or hide my feelings about this until reaching the end of the video. I'm just going to say that this is my absolute favorite album we've looked at so far. So what is Purple Mountains? Well, it's kind of an indie rock album, but there's a bit of honky-tonk country and Bob Dylan-esque folk thrown in there for good measure. Overall, though, the album is about frontman David Berman's struggles in his battle with depression. So there's certainly a somber melancholia that hangs over the whole thing, but it's not content to wallow in that doom and gloom. In fact, it's quite funny. The lyrics are devilishly clever, and almost every single one of them leaves you with a wry smirk on your face. Normally, when I listen to an album, I tend to reserve judgment about whether or not I like it until halfway through or so. But with Purple Mountains, I knew I was in love with it after the first stanza. In the opening track, that's just the way I feel. The lines that kick off the album are as follows, and I'll give my best rendition of it. Well, I don't like talking to myself, but someone's gotta say it, hell. I mean, things have not been going well. This time I think I finally fucked myself. It was blunt, it was honest right out of the gate, and it was said with a sardonic wit. And things just escalate from there. There's lyrics that are a little less blunt, a little bit more obtuse and poetic. It's just devilishly clever. The wordplay is on point with this. In the second track, called All My Happiness Is Gone, we open with friends are warmer than gold when you're old, and keeping them is harder than you might suppose. Lately I tend to make strangers wherever I go. Some of them were once people I was happy to know. And I just love that idea of making strangers, which is echoed in the sixth track of the album, She's Making Friends, I'm Turning Stranger. It's just so clever around every corner. I don't want to give away every single line that I loved because some of the fun is being surprised at every turn, just how witty David Berman, the songwriter, can be. And I strongly recommend going through the record and hearing those twist of phrase is for yourself. If you don't have time to listen to the whole thing, the tracks that I would recommend jumping into are That's Just the Way I Feel, All My Happiness Is Gone, Maybe I'm the Only One for Me, She's Making Friends, and I'm Turning Stranger, and then perhaps Darkness and Cold. There's Every track on this thing is a masterpiece, though. Those are just the funniest and the wittiest in my estimation. There's ones that are a little bit more somber, as I said, like Nights That Won't Happen and I Loved Being My Mother's Son, which are more dour, more down in the dumps, but those are just as good as the witty, clever ones. Now, as raucously hilarious as it is, I do need to delve a little bit into the more serious element of it, because, of course, as I've said, it's David Berman coping with his depression in the only way he knows how. And unfortunately, about a month after the album's release, David Berman did take his own life, which does recontextualize a lot of the album in a way. It's certainly harder to listen to knowing that it was a coping mechanism for him, but it didn't quite work. It's hard to talk about. I mean, just because on a personal level, this was the first album that I ever heard by that David Berman was involved in, and I loved it so much that knowing that there wouldn't be any more music produced by him was such a disappointment. But I don't think, well, that does recontextualize the album. I don't think it takes away from it. It's still funny. It's hilarious, and it does end on kind of a hopeful note. In the final song, Maybe I'm the Only One for Me, in the chorus, there's I'll put my dreams high on a shelf. I'll have to learn to like myself. And so there was the learning. There was a vow that the learning would happen. And just because of the tragic ending that David Berman met, I think it's still possible to find comfort and to take something away from this album. And I imagine that that's what David Berman would have wanted with producing the album. I mean, those are kind of my thoughts about Purple Mountains. I could talk about it for a long time just because of the nature of doing the show and waiting on guests to get back to me. I've listened to this one quite a few times for months now, and every time there's something new and something fun about it. So I definitely recommend it. And I don't know a ton about it yet, but David Berman's full discography, he was part of a band called Silver Jews that disbanded in 2009. So there was a 10-year hiatus before Purple Mountains came into existence and David Berman started producing music again. So there is a backlog to look through. I haven't quite combed through it yet just because I want to savor it, because I know that there won't be any more music from him. So I'm taking my time to go through the Silver Jews discography. Although I do know that I do recommend the song Candy Jail. I think by them, I think it's brilliant. So that's what I think of Purple Mountains. I love it so much. It's just a real wonderful treat of an album. It's my favorite thing so far. It's better than Clean. It's better than New York is Killing Me. That's not what it's called. I'm New Here by Gil Scott-Heron. It really takes the cake, and I think it's gonna be a while before something tops it on this campaign. So I'm excited to get the ball rolling again. I hope people are still enjoying this gibberish nonsense vanity project that we're doing, and keep paying attention and go listen to Purple Mountains, because you will not regret it.